Hannah woke up before dawn, her body heavy with dread. She stood before the mirror, brushing her long black hair into a limp ponytail, pinching her cheeks to drain them of warmth and dusting gray powder beneath her eyes to appear tired. Her aunt. I hovered nearby, holding out an old-fashioned floral dress that Hannah hated. "Wear this. It's men like humble girls," her aunt whispered sharply. Hannah could only nod. She never wanted this blind date. She never wanted to parade herself before another man, least of all one her aunt insisted was rich and powerful. But debts weighed like chains around their ankles. Her father had died with nothing left behind but an unfinished novel and a broken bookstore. Her mother had withered under grief, leaving Hannah to care for their little home with the roof that leaked each monsoon. She walked into the cafe at noon, every step an echo of her resistance. She avoided all eye contact, holding her old bag too, her chest as if it were a shield. She scanned the tables. No one looked at her twice, except for the man sitting by the window, his hair a deep chestnut falling over his forehead. His eyes sharp as they observed her from above his coffee cup. He wore a tailored dark gray suit, no tie, collar slightly open. There was an air of quiet command around him, though he appeared to be her age or slightly older. Hannah faltered. She forced her shoulders to slump more as she approached. "Umari Yotakumi?" she asked softly. Eyes down, the man set down his cup, tilting his head. "That's me. And you're Hannah, correct?" She nodded without meeting his gaze. Tima studied her silently. His company profile had described him as logical, precise, somewhat aloof, and dangerously intelligent. He had built one of the fastest-growing fintech platforms in the country from a single idea scribbled on a ramen receipt. Hannah knew none of this, only that his stare made her feel exposed. "You're not what I expected," he said after a moment. No," she whispered. "I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing?" His voice was calm, curious rather than judgmental. I know I'm plain." Takumi leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. "Plain isn't the word I'd use." Hannah swallowed hard. "I won't waste your time," she added quickly. "I know you must be busy. We can just end this." "Do you want to end it?" Takumi asked lightly. Hannah's heart pounded. "I don't want to inconvenience you." "Inconvenience me?" He raised an eyebrow, then chuckled under his breath. "You're intriguing, Hannah." She flinched. "I'm really not." "Oh, but you are. You go through all this effort to look awkward. Your makeup is uneven. Your hair is tied too tightly. That dress doesn't suit your build. That you carry yourself with a dignity I don't see often." Her eyes darted up in shock. I don't... "You're hiding yourself," he said, his eyes narrowing in a way that made her stomach flutter with unease. "But I wonder what you're hiding from." She clenched her hands together. "I'm not hiding." "Liar," he replied softly, almost kindly. Hannah looked away, her vision blurring. With embarrassment and fear, her entire plan was crumbling. She had imagined a man so disinterested he would never contact her again. Instead, Takumi was studying her like a puzzle to solve. A waitress arrived with their drinks. Hannah thanked her in a trembling voice. "Takumi's." Eyes flicked to the waitress, then back to Hannah. "Tell me something true," he said suddenly. What do you mean? Something true about yourself?" "Anything." Hannah's throat closed. Everything she wanted to say felt foolish, that she loved the smell of old pages, that she cried when she saw sparrows fighting over crumbs, that she wished she could run away to the mountains and disappear. She whispered the first truth that escaped. "I don't like coffee." Takumi smiled slightly. "Good. Then I'll order you tea next time." Her head snapped up. "On next time." "Did you think this was it?" he asked. "I haven't even started to understand you yet." She gripped the edge of the table, breathing unsteadily. "I'm really not worth your time." "I disagree." Hannah felt her chest tighten. She wanted to scream at him to leave her alone. She wanted to throw her glass at his perfect face. But her body remained frozen in polite obedience. Takumi checked his watch, then stood. "I have a meeting, but I will see you again soon." She scrambled up after him. "Please, you don't." "Have to." He paused beside her, leaning down close enough that she smelled faint cedarwood cologne beneath his suit. His voice dropped to a near whisper. "Stop pretending, Hannah. I look forward to seeing who you really are." He left without waiting for her reply. Hannah collapsed back into her chair, her hands trembling violently. Her reflection in the cafe window looked like a ghost of herself. She had thought she could hide, but Takumi saw right through her. For the first time in years, she felt real fear coil around her ribs. It's not fear of rejection. It's not fear of failure. But fear of being seen completely, without the armor she had spent a lifetime crafting. Hannah woke up with a start the next morning. Her pillow damp with tears she could not remember shedding. Dreams had haunted her. Dreams were Takumi's. Eyes glowed in the dark as he whispered her secrets back to her. She pressed her palms against her cheeks, willing the memory away. Her phone buzzed, vibrating against the worn wooden table beside her futon. She forced herself to sit up, her hair a wild tangle around her shoulders. Blinking blearily, she read the message displayed on her cracked screen. "Meet me at Azure Tower, 7 p.m. Formal dress." Her stomach clenched. Azure Tower, she had seen it. Only on TV, a high-rise of glass and steel that housed Takumi's headquarters on the top 15 floors. He wanted her to come there? For what purpose? She called her Aunt Mai in a panic. "Calm down," her aunt scolded. "Maybe he wants to propose officially. I don't want him to propose." Hannah nearly shouted, her voice cracking with dread. "I just want this to end. So don't be ungrateful. If he likes you, you should thank the gods. Look at your life. Look at our debts. Are you so selfish that you would turn away a chance to save us all?" Her aunt's words pierced like ice through her chest. She bit her lip hard enough to taste. Iron and ended the call without another word. She sat there in silence for a long time, her breath shallow and ragged. Finally, she rose and went to her small wardrobe. She had only 2 formal dresses, one pale lavender with a delicate chiffon overlay, the other a deep navy gown with simple lines that hugged her waist and fell in elegant folds to her ankles. She chose the navy, hoping it would make her look older, wiser, less breakable. When she arrived at Azure Tower that evening, the sun was bleeding orange behind the city skyline. Glass doors slid open before her as she stepped inside, swallowed by the cold grandeur of the lobby. Polished marble floors stretched endlessly, reflecting crystal chandeliers and golden trims. Office workers bustled past her in sharp suits, heels tapping like gunshots against stone. "Miss Hannah," a man in black approached her. He wore an earpiece and bowed slightly. "Mr. Takumi is waiting for you upstairs. Please follow me." She followed silently into the private lift. It rose without a sound, her stomach dipping as floors blurred past in flickering lights. When the doors opened, she found herself in a vast hallway of glass walls and steel beams. Moonlight spilled through from all sides, casting silver shadows. Across the carpet, Tummy stood by a window at the end of the corridor, his silhouette outlined against the shimmering skyline. Tonight, he wore a black 3-piece suit with no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His hair fell slightly over one eye, giving him a deceptively soft appearance that melted away the moment he turned to face her. "You came?" he said quietly. Hannah lowered her gaze, clutching her small purse in trembling hands. "You told me to." He smiled faintly. "True. Come." She followed him into a wide room filled with staff bustling around racks of designer clothing, jewelry, trays and mirrors rimmed with bright lights. She froze in the doorway, staring in confusion and fear. "Mr. Takumi, is this the final fitting?" A tall woman with a severe bun asked briskly. "Yes," he replied. "She will wear the midnight velvet." "Understood." Before Hannah could speak, the woman and 2 assistants whisked her into a curtained changing area. They unzipped her navy gown and replaced it with a deep, sapphire evening dress that glittered with tiny crystals across the bodice. It fit her perfectly, hugging her waist before flaring out into a soft train. One assistant began brushing her hair, pinning it up into an elegant twist, while another applied subtle makeup that made her large dark eyes glow and her lips bloom like camellia petals. She barely recognized herself when they turned her to the mirror. Her pulse thudded painfully in her throat. "Beautiful," the stylist murmured with approval. Mr. Takumi has excellent taste. She flinched. His taste? Why does it matter what he likes? Takumi's voice reached her from outside the curtain. Come. She stepped out, clutching her hands together to stop them trembling. He surveyed her in silence, his expression unreadable. Then he gave a small nod. Perfect. Let's go. Where are we going? She asked in a choked whisper as he led her back to the lift. The company gala. You are my date tonight. Her legs almost gave way. To can't? I'm not. Yes, you can, he said calmly, pressing the lift button. Besides, I want them to see you. The doors closed before she could protest further. She stared at the floor, her chest tight with panic. A gala, cameras, important people. Why is he doing this to me? The lift opened into a vast ballroom that glittered with crystal chandeliers, mirrored pillars, and rich navy drapes embroidered with silver threads. Men in tuxedos and women in gowns of every jewel tone mingled, holding champagne flutes and murmuring polite greetings. Photographers moved like silent shadows along the edges of the crowd. Takumi placed his hand lightly against the small of her back, guiding her forward. She flinched at his touch, but his grip was steady and impersonal. Mr. Takumi, an older man, greeted with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Dire companion? This is Hana, Takumi said smoothly. She is with me. The man's eyebrows rose almost imperceptibly before he bowed his head politely. Pleasure to meet. You, Miss Hana. Nice to meet you, she stammered, her voice barely audible. Tama moved them through the room with graceful efficiency, nodding to each greeting but never pausing long. Hana felt like a doll at his side, painted and displayed for the world. To see halfway through the evening, he excused himself to speak with a board director. She stood awkwardly by a pillar, gripping her clutch with whitened knuckles, her eyes down. She felt like she could barely breathe under the weight of so many glittering eyes. Miss, are you all right? A soft voice asked. She turned to see Anne, elderly woman sitting nearby in a wheelchair wearing a simple gray dress and pearl earrings. Her hair was white and wispy around her lined face. I'm fine, thank you, Hana said, forcing a smile. You look so tense, the woman chuckled. Here, hold my hand for a moment, Hana obeyed without thinking. The woman's grip was surprisingly strong and warm. You're kind, the old woman said quietly, squeezing her fingers. Don't let this place change that. Hana's eyes blurred with sudden tears. She swallowed them down, shaking her head. I won't. Takumi returned at that moment, his gaze flicking to their joined hands. He smiled faintly and bowed to the old woman. Madam Chairwoman? He greeted respectfully. Hana's eyes widened in shock. Not Chairwoman. Shh. This is thank you for keeping her company, Takumi said. She has a pure heart. The chairwoman replied with a knowing look. Take care of her, Takumi. I will, he replied softly. As he guided Hana away, her mind spun with confusion. She's the chairwoman, and she spoke to me so kindly. How does she know Takumi so well? Takumi led her onto the balcony away from the noise and lights. The city glittered below them like a field of fallen stars. Cool wind whipped strands of hair free from her pinned style, brushing them across her cheeks. Why did you bring me here? She asked finally, her voice trembling with exhaustion. He turned to face her, leaning against the marble railing. Moonlight cut across his face, illuminating the shadowed depths of his eyes. Because, said softly, I wanted to see you. See me? She echoed, confused. Your truth? Your real self, he replied, his gaze unblinking. Tonight? I saw her. You were beautiful, yes. But when you spoke with Madam Chairwoman, your kindness shone. That is rarer than beauty. Hana looked away, her chest aching. You're just saying that? No, he said. I never say things I don't mean. She closed her eyes against the tears burning behind her lids. Please stop looking at me like that. I can't be what you want. He stepped forward, his presence looming around her, not oppressive, but protective. His voice dropped to a near whisper. You're wrong, Hana. You're exactly what I want. Her eyes snapped, open in shock. Before she could reply, he reached into his suit pocket and withdrew a small black velvet box. He flipped it open, revealing a simple platinum ring set with a single diamond. Her breath stopped. Mr. Takumi, what is this? Marry me. He said quietly. The words fell between them like stones into a silent pond, sending ripples through every hidden part of her. No, she whispered, shaking her head violently. No, I can't. This isn't real, it is, he said, his voice calm and steady. I need a wife, Hannah, and I choose you. She stumbled back a step, tears spilling down her cheeks now. You're joking, you're mocking, May, he reached out, catching her hand before she could flee. His grip was gentle but unyielding. I'm not mocking you. I am asking you to marry me. She shook her head again, sobbing softly. I'm just nothing. I'm no one. I'm just a student with debts and broken dreams. You can't choose me. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed. A soft kiss against her trembling fingers. I can, and I have. Her heart beat so loudly, she thought it would tear itself apart. She felt the ground slipping away beneath her feet, replaced by a terrifying, beautiful abyss she did not know how to survive, as the city lights burned silently below them. Hannah closed her eyes, her tears falling freely into the night wind. Hannah could not sleep that night. She lay on her futon, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, listening to the whisper of wind through the broken window pane. Takumi's words replayed in her mind, curling around her ribs like invisible chains. Marry me. She pressed her palms against her ears as if she could silence the echo. Her tears had dried hours ago, leaving her eyes burning and swollen. In her chest, fear warred with something darker, a quiet longing she did not dare to name. At dawn, she rose and made tea for her mother, careful not to wake her aunt, who slept in the next room. She carried the steaming cup into the dim bedroom, where her mother lay curled beneath a faded cotton blanket. The once vibrant woman who had recited poetry to Hannah beneath spring plum trees was now thin as paper, her eyes closed against the world. Mama, Hannah whispered softly, brushing stray strands of hair from her mother's forehead. Should I do something I hate to protect what you left behind? Her mother did not stir. Her breath was shallow but steady, misting the cool morning air. Hannah squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to stand, to move, to keep breathing. She placed the cup on the low table and walked out before her tears could fall onto her mother's. Sleepingform.takumi sent no messages that day. The silence made her stomach churn. She went to her literature class as usual, sat in the back, took notes mechanically. Her professor's voice blurred into meaningless syllables. At lunch, she sat alone in the courtyard, staring at the swaying sakura branches overhead. Hannah, voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. She flinched, looking up to see Aki, her only friend in the department. His messy hair fell into his eyes, and he wore the same olive cardigan he wore every week. You okay? He asked, frowning. You look pale. I'm fine, she lied softly. You've been quiet lately, more than usual. He added with an awkward smile. She tried to return it, but her lips trembled. It's just family things. If you need anything, I don't have much, but I'll help. Her throat tightened painfully. Aki, with his gentle eyes and clumsy kindness, reminded her of a life she could never have, one filled with small joys and honest poverty. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. He opened his mouth to say more, but her phone buzzed sharply. She glanced down and froze. A single message from an unknown number. Come to Azure Tower, 7 p.m. She knew it was him. That evening, she stood before Azure Tower once more, wrapped in a thin cream coat to guard against the chill. The lobby was quiet, polished marble reflecting the golden dusklight through vast glass windows. The same security. Guard from before greeted her with a silent bow, guiding her to Takumi's private lift. She clenched her hands together as the doors closed. Why is he doing this? What does he want from me? The lift opened directly into his office this time, a cavernous space of black marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls revealing the city's skyline, and a minimalist desk holding only his laptop. and a glass paperweight shaped like a lotus tomb stood by the window, staring out at the dying sun. He turned at her entrance, his expression as unreadable as ever. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. She stepped forward hesitantly. I didn't know if I should. I asked you to." You asked me to marry you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes," he said, unmoving. She shook her head violently, tears welling. "I don't understand. I'm no one. I have nothing to offer you." He walked toward her slowly, his gaze locked onto hers. She forced herself not to look away, though his eyes burned into her soul. "I need a wife," he said simply. "Why?" she choked out. "For my company. My board is forcing me to stabilize my image before our international expansion. They want to see a family man. It reassures investors. It assures the media. Keeps vultures away." She flinched at his cold explanation. "So this is just business?" His gaze softened infinitesimally. "It is business, but not only business." She shook her head again, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You're lying. There are thousands of women more suited than me. Women who know how to smile and speak politely and fit into your world." "I don't want them," he said quietly. "Why?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "Me." He reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek with a gentleness that made her knees buckle. "Because you're real," he murmured. "You don't want this. You don't want me. And that makes you the only person I can trust." She stared at him in shock, her breath coming in ragged sobs. "I don't understand," he whispered. "You don't need to," he said softly. "Just agree." She closed her eyes, swaying on her feet. Images flashed through her mind. Her mother's frail form, their leaking roof, her aunt's bitter scolding, her father's abandoned bookstore gathering dust and debt. "If I agree," she whispered, "what happens to me?" "You will live here. You will be my wife in public. In private, we will live as strangers if you prefer. I will clear your family's debts. I will ensure your mother receives proper medical care." Her tears fell harder now, dripping silently. Onto the black marble floor. "You will own me," she said brokenly. "No," he said firmly. "I don't want to own you. I want to protect you." She shook her head, sobs racking her thin frame. I don't know if I can do this." "You can," he said softly, stepping closer, his scent of cedar wood and cool rain enveloping her. "And if one day you wish to leave, I will let you go. With everything I have promised you intact." She looked up at him then, her vision blurred with tears. His face was so close, his eyes dark and endless as night. In them she saw no greed, no lust, no anger. Only something she could not name, something like loneliness. I agree," she whispered. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, exhaling softly, as if releasing a breath he had held for years. "Thank you," he said simply. She stood trembling before him, her heart screaming in silent terror. He reached out and took her hand, sliding the platinum ring onto her thin finger. It fit perfectly, the cool metal, a stark weight against her feverish skin. "From today," he murmured, his thumb brushing lightly over her knuckles, "you are mine." Her tears fell silently onto the ring, gleaming like tiny shattered stars. In the fading light, the wedding was held 1 week later in the private hall of Azure Tower. No guests were invited except for immediate board members and the chairwoman. Smiled at Hannah with the same gentle eyes as before. Hannah wore an ivory silk gown with lace sleeves, her hair swept into an elegant chignon adorned with pearls. Her makeup was light and natural, emphasizing her large, dark eyes and delicate lips. When she saw herself in the mirror, she felt as if she were looking at a stranger wearing her skin. Tuma wore a classic black tuxedo with a charcoal tie. His hair was styled neatly, revealing his sharp cheekbones and strong jawline. He looked impossibly handsome, like an ancient sculpture brought to life. "You look beautiful," he whispered when he saw her. She lowered her gaze. "Thank you." The ceremony was short and silent. Vows were spoken in hushed voices, rings exchanged with mechanical precision. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Takumi lifted her veil and pressed a chaste kiss to her forehead. Cameras flashed around them, capturing the perfect image of a powerful CEO and his demure bride. That night, he returned to his penthouse apartment on the 74th floor. The space was vast and silent, decorated in monochrome minimalism. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city sprawled below like a sea of fallen stars. Might showed her to a guest bedroom with a soft, king-sized bed dressed in gray linen. "This will be your room," he said quietly. "You may decorate it however you wish. If you need anything, ask my staff or contact me directly." She nodded numbly, standing with her hands clasped before her. He hesitated in the doorway, his eyes lingering on her downcast face. "Hannah," he said softly. She looked up, her eyes empty. "Thank you," he whispered. She swallowed hard and turned away, unable to bear the gentleness in his voice. When he left, she sank onto the bed, clutching her trembling hands together. He was spilled silently down her cheeks, soaking the ivory silk of her gown. She pressed her face into her palms, her shoulders shaking with sobs she could no longer contain. She was married to a man she did not know, bound to a life she did not choose, chained by love she did not believe in, but deep in her chest beneath the terror and grief, a tiny ember glowed with quiet. Dangerous hope ends. Days after the wedding passed in silent routine. Each morning she woke before dawn, washed her face in the marble basin, tied her hair back into a neat ponytail, and stepped out into the quiet apartment to make tea for herself. Takumi had staff to do everything for him, yet she found peace in the simple act of boiling water, of feeling steam warm her face. She rarely saw him in the mornings. By the time she sipped her tea alone on the balcony, he had already left for his meetings, his suits hanging in perfect rows, his cologne lingering faintly in the hallways. The apartment felt like a museum, pristine, untouched, silent. At night, he returned late, his footsteps muffled on the thick carpets. He would knock softly on her door to let her know he was home. Sometimes he left her a note under the door, reminders to eat dinner, to call her mother, to rest. His words were simple and brief, yet each one burned against her chest like a secret brand. They lived as strangers as they had agreed. Yet in small moments, the silence between them grew heavy with something unspoken. One evening, 2 months into their marriage, Hannah awoke to find rain lashing against the glass walls. Lightning flickered across the sky, illuminating the vast bedroom in harsh white flashes. She rose, unable to sleep, and walked barefoot into the living room. Tummy sat on the sofa in darkness, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped tightly together. Thunder rolled overhead, shaking the windows. He did not move, did not react. "Takumi," she whispered softly. He flinched as if her voice had pulled him from far away. When he looked up, his eyes were shadowed with exhaustion, and something deeper, a quiet grief that pierced her heart. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "The storm woke me," she replied. He nodded, looking away. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the rain pounding against glass. "Did something happen?" she asked hesitantly. He did not answer at first. Then he exhaled shakily, rubbing a hand over his face. "Today is my mother's death anniversary." Her breath caught. She had never heard him speak of his family before. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "She died when I was 17. He continued, his voice quiet and flat. "My father left us years before. After she passed, I built this company from nothing. I thought if I became powerful enough, rich enough, I would never lose anyone again." Hannah's chest tightened painfully. She moved forward and knelt before him, reaching out to take his cold hands into hers. He stared down at her, his eyes wide, with shock at her touch. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "You've carried this alone for so long." His hands trembled in hers. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. Thunder rumbled again, vibrating through the floor and into their bones. "Takumi," she said softly, tightening her grip on his hands. "You don't have to be alone anymore." His shoulders shook, his breath coming in ragged gasps. For the first time since she had met him, he bowed his head and let his tears fall freely, silent and hidden in the shadows of the stormlit room. She rose and wrapped her arms around him, pressing his face into her shoulder. He clutched her tightly, his entire body trembling with the force of his grief. She stroked his hair gently, whispering soothing words into his ear as lightning flashed outside. When his sobs finally quieted, he pulled back slightly to look at her. His eyes were red-rimmed and glassy with tears. "Why are you so kind to me?" he asked in a broken whisper. She smiled through her tears, brushing his damp hair back from his forehead. "Because you're human too." He closed his eyes, his breath shuddering out softly. Then he leaned forward and pressed his lips against her forehead. His kiss was gentle, trembling, filled with gratitude and something deeper that terrified her. "I don't deserve you," he whispered against her. "Skin, no one deserves anyone," she replied softly. "We choose each other." He pulled back to stare at her, his gaze searching her face desperately. "Then will you choose me, Hannah? Not as a contract, not as a wife in name only, but as a woman, as a partneress, someone who could love me." Chest ached with the force of her beating heart. Tears spilled down her cheeks again, hot and unstoppable. "I already have," she whispered. He let out a ragged breath, his eyes closing as tears slid down his face once more. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly it almost hurt, his heart pounding against hers. "I love you," he whispered brokenly into her hair. "I love you so much it terrifies me." She sobbed softly against his chest, her arms wrapping around his neck. "I love you too," she whispered back. "I think I've loved you from the first moment you saw me when no one else did." They sat together in the darkness, the storm raging around them, their tears mingling. With the rain, for the first time in both their lives, the masks they wore fell away completely, leaving them raw and trembling in each other's arms. Morning came gray and silent, the storm clouds drifting away into pale dawn. Hannah woke to find Takumi sleeping beside her on the sofa, his arms wrapped tightly around her waist, his face buried against her chest. She stroked his hair gently, feeling his slow, steady breaths warm against her skin. When he stirred awake, his eyes opened slowly, confusion clouding them before they focused on her face. "You're still here," he whispered, his voice rough with sleep. "I will always be here," she replied softly. He closed his eyes again and tightened his embrace, burying his face deeper against her. "I'm scared," he whispered. "Of what?" "Of losing this. Of losing you." She pressed a soft kiss to his forehead. "Then don't let go." He looked up at her, his eyes dark and endless as the sea, filled now with something bright and alive. "Never," he whispered. "I will never let go." The months that followed were filled with quiet changes. Hannah began redecorating her room with soft colors, hanging dried flowers and delicate calligraphy poems along the walls. Takumi started coming home earlier each evening, often finding her curled on the sofa reading or napping beneath a warm blanket. He would sit beside her silently, his hand resting gently on her hair. Content just to exist beside her, she began cooking dinner for him on weekends, simple meals of miso soup, rice-grilled fish, and pickled vegetables. He ate everything, with silent gratitude, his eyes softening each time she refilled his tea. "You don't have to cook for me," he told her once. "I know," she replied with a small smile. "I wanna—" Each night they fell asleep side by side, their fingers entwined beneath the blankets, their breaths mingling in the quiet darkness. One rainy evening, exactly a year after their first meeting, Takumi took her back to the small cafe where their story had begun. They sat at the same table by the window, a scent of roasted coffee beans and steamed milk curling around them. "Hannah," he said softly, reaching across the table to take her hands into his. "Do you remember what I told you here that day?" She smiled faintly. "You told me to stop pretending." He nodded, his eyes glimmering. "And you did. Showed me who you really arraigned. You showed me who I really am, too." The tears filled her eyes. Takumi, he stood, walking around the table to kneel before her. She gasped softly as he drew out a small box from his coat pocket, opening it to reveal a delicate gold band set with a tiny blue sapphire. "Marry me," he whispered, his voice trembling. "For real this time. Not for business, not for appearances, but for love." Her tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded, her entire body shaking with joy. "Yes," she whispered brokenly. "Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, then rose to pull her into his arms, kissing her deeply as rain fell in silver sheets beyond the glass. When they pulled back, breathless and smiling, he pressed his forehead against hers. "No more masks," he whispered. "No more masks." She agreed softly, and for the first time in both their lives, they felt completely unmasked, unhidden, and unafraid. Beneath the soft golden lights of the small cafe where it all began, two broken souls finally found home in each other's hearts. The end of story.